Hello and welcome to a new podcast called The Luxury of Choice, brought to you by the training team of George James Limited. This is a monthly podcast that looks at all aspects of sales, sales management and business management for sales professionals working in technical fields. My name's Steve and I'm joined by my colleague Jonathan Cooper.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Cooper, co-founder of George James, and I actively deliver our training to our customers.
You absolutely do. And Prue Layton.
Hi, I'm Prue, been around here for 10 years. Really excited this is the first one to share our thoughts with the listeners.
Absolutely. I think we're all excited to be doing. We've talked about this podcast for a while, but we're actually now finally doing it. So, exciting times. We're in a nice echoey room, but hopefully it's not too echoey. We should explain where we are actually, guys. We're in a house somewhere in Warwickshire, in Hampton in Arden.
Hampton in Arden, correct.
And we've had our team meeting here, yeah?
Yep, we had a fantastic 2-day strategy meeting. Yeah, it's been excellent.
And we're actually sitting on the kitchen table waiting for our curry to be delivered, but the listener doesn't need to know that, do they?
Correct.
So we've called this podcast The Luxury of Choice, and it's quite an unusual name, I think. And Jonathan, it's fair to say it was your idea. So let's tell the listener before we go any further, what is a luxury of choice?
Well, interestingly, Steve, it might not actually have been my idea.
I'm sure it was.
Many years ago, I just ended up with this phrase, luxury of choice, which happened to find its way into one of my training sessions when I was working with a team on prospecting. And it kind of came about because I felt that, our customers have this amazing choice, don't they? Let's face it, we think we're a fantastic sales training company, and we are. However, people have a choice. There are many other, really good sales training companies out there.
Yeah.
And if you go in your private life and buy anything these days, you normally end up with this fantastic choice.
Absolutely.
So our customers have this choice.
Yeah.
And I just thought, well, why shouldn't we have a choice as salespeople? Why shouldn't we have a choice? So in the same way, my thought was, we should be able to create this luxury of choice. Where those words came from, I don't know.
I absolutely
and if
love
there's
it.
Anybody listening out there who gave me that expression, all I can say is thank you very much indeed. And, it would be wonderful to acknowledge you. So
hopefully we don't owe them any royalties.
Correct.
So, Prue, what's your thoughts on this? So, luxury of choice, what does that mean to you?
I think as a young salesperson, I didn't imagine there was ever a luxury of choice.
Okay.
And it's really only working for many years and seeing, actually, I don't have to chase every single person that's interested.
Right.
And that I should take a bit of control over who I work with, who's best for me to work with. And for me, that was starting to think about the idea of having a luxury of choice about who I worked with and not letting prospective customers choose.
Right. So what you're saying is then, I think both of you, is that our customers, including our customers, but, the people listening to the show, their customers, there's never been a wider choice of suppliers in all aspects, I think, of business, really, yeah?
I think that would be fair to say.
Yeah,
and
IT, whatever.
And recent, recent tough economic times,
right,
have ensured that what is around today is strong,
right,
and clearly able to offer a great service, a great product, a great solution to their customers.
But you're completely reversing that concept and saying, look at it instead of the customer, look at it as you as a sales professional.
Yeah, and I would never say you should never be. It's not about being arrogant. That's absolutely not what it's about. But it is. When you're thinking about exceeding your sales targets. It's thinking about, that rawest of input, at the top of your sales funnel, your pipeline, what are you going to put in your pipeline, your funnel to make your number?
Okay.
And surely it's about, doing that in the easiest possible way with the least possible effort.
Right. So you've used a few words there which are kind of sales training speak, which I guess we're all familiar with, funnel, pipeline. So in a very sort of simplistic way, Prue, before we get into the sort of, we'll cover these kind of things, I'm sure, in future episodes, but in terms of putting this in a way that perhaps somebody who's not directly in sales might be thinking of joining sales. What do we mean by all these things? What is a funnel? What is a pipeline?
So a sales funnel or a sales pipeline are used for the same thing, really.
Okay.
They effectively mean the same thing. And what they are is that collection of potential customers who may be interested in something that you have to offer. Mm-hmm. And they're people that we spend time and work with and speak to say, are they eventually going to be somebody who buys my products or services?
Okay. So people that we go and visit, people we might take for demonstrations, those kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah, or involve our colleagues as well in helping us as well, our specialist colleagues. So
Yeah, I got that. So, but why? I'm a customer. I put my head up and say, "Oh, I'm interested in buying one of your products." Why would we not want to take all of those people into our pipelines?
Well, some of course will be easier to convert than others.
Of course, yeah.
And I think for me, the very beginning of all of this, where does it all start, is around, I think, understanding ultimately the overall vision, strategic direction of your business. And I always say to salespeople, it's really important that you take some time to understand that. That is actually normally well documented. And for me, it's about getting broad alignment with that overall vision and strategic direction of the business, because the next step for me is about developing a territory sales plan or a sales business plan, a sales plan. They go by many names in many formats. But having that plan for me is the very first step in making sure that you ultimately strive for this luxury of choice,
right?
Because that will define, ultimately, where you go prospecting, where you go looking for business. It's very easy to go and look for business, but where do we go? The universe is a huge place, and if we were going into space to look for life, wow, it would. You'd have a plan before you went there.
You absolutely would,
you'd build a spaceship actually capable of getting to where you needed to get to.
Okay.
So I think really, really important that we start with a plan that, as I said, aligns with that vision and strategy from the top of the business. And we have that plan. What does that plan do? It helps us understand, the customers we want to target, the markets that they are in, the applications they perform, et cetera, et cetera. And, by going through that thinking process and just stepping back and thinking about your business in that way, I think just gives you a great start. Where would I go prospecting? And that, should start to answer some questions for you.
Your thoughts, Prue?
But I think if you said, why don't you just work with everybody who's interested in you, then one of the things we can't change for people is how much time they've got to achieve the goals they have. So
do you mean the salesperson or the customer there?
The salesperson.
Right, okay.
Yeah. As a salesperson, you'll have a target, you'll have some expectations, and you frankly don't have time to follow up every single small amount of interest. Mm-hmm. So there will be opportunities, or you'll understand those customers, I think, as Jonathan said, who are easy to convert, who will be more efficient and effective. So I think we need to be able to choose those customers who will benefit the best from our solutions, fit really well into what we have to offer, rather than treat everybody the same.
That's really interesting. So, for people who obviously don't know what we do, George James, most of the companies we train are operating in very technical environments, life sciences, biotechnology, analytical equipment, medical devices. And there's some really cutting-edge technology there, isn't there? Some really high-end science.
Absolutely.
And I think it's fair to say some of the companies we work with have got almost a unique proposition, really. Nobody's, I wouldn't say no competition, but that's, certainly no direct competitor in terms of a Me Too, yeah?
Yeah, for some, I think that's absolutely right.
So does this still apply for these guys?
I think it does, because I think it's only a matter of time. I only have a relatively limited view of the world, of course. But, my experience tells me that, yes, a company, you may have a unique product today, but it's only a matter of time before somebody else takes a look at that, sees as an opportunity, and either makes something that's better than what you have, or at least as good at half the price.
Right.
And, and then, this skill, this capability to develop this luxury of choice, through effective planning and ultimately prospecting, becomes absolutely critical to your success. And, when competition does strike, it's a huge and sudden change for people. Right. And suddenly, they're scrabbling around, thinking, gee, where's the next piece of business coming from?
Sure.
And, and that, again, it goes back to, having that plan, anticipating that this might happen, and being able to prospect effectively.
Absolutely. So, Prue, you wrote an article on our new website recently. I think it was called Swimming with Sharks. Is this the kind of thing you meant by that?
Yeah, it is. I think that, we've had experience, many of us who've had long sales careers, of having something that's technically, or the specification is so much better than anybody else's. And it's great to have that, but it doesn't last forever.
Right.
And I think and under those circumstances, we have to be able to be effective wherever we are in the product life cycle. But I also wanted to pick up on something you said earlier, Jonathan, in terms of doing the planning. But even if you have a product or an offering that's so much better than anybody else's at that time, it has to be aligned with the strategy of the organisation. Because if they're all aligned and supported and being able to do a good job and deliver a fantastic customer experience for this particular sector, this application, the salesperson needs to be aligned with that, because we get really good promoters of that product because the product's really designed for them. They love having it. We support it really well.
Right.
And trying to sell in a different direction to the direction your company's heading. We'll get off track rapidly if we go down this one. But that's incredibly frustrating, right? And and I appreciate how it can happen sometimes. Sometimes a sales territory, your specific territory might not align with what the global picture looks like.
Right.
So therefore, I think the planning becomes even more important.
So what you're saying is, if the company strategy is let's focus on the pharmaceutical industry, for example, but your territory hasn't got much pharmaceutical industry, so how does that work then? Do you then say, well, that doesn't work for me here? Or do we fit into the overall company strategy? What do we think on that one, guys?
Yeah, I think that's a good one, Steve. And I don't think that's ever easy. Somebody once gave me a great phrase, and if he's listening, he'll know who it is. It's about broad alignment. Okay. So we can look around, look at sectors very closely related to pharmaceutical, which might, give us some clues about, where we can go do business. That again, broadly aligns with that direction, and so everybody is pulling in that direction, as Prue talked about.
Okay.
And we're with that direction and not heading 180 degrees the opposite way.
So you're not on the tug of war pulling in a different direction to everybody else.
Yes, correct. Yeah, good way of putting it. Correct.
But also understanding the key drivers of that industry are often applicable for allied industries who have similar drivers, but maybe slightly different applications.
Yeah, I get that. So let's go back to this luxury of choice then.
Yeah.
So what we're saying here is really is that you want to have so much stuff that you're working on as a salesperson that you can pick out the good ones. Is that realistic? Does it ever really happen?
No, absolutely it doesn't.
Okay.
So I remember in the early days of introducing this concept, and it did stick. It did stick with people as a concept. Some really bright, real bright sales guy asked me, and genuinely so, really good question. So, come on, Jonathan, how many times have you achieved it? And I had to be really honest and say, actually, I've never achieved it.
Right.
However, I can think on at least 2 occasions, once as a salesperson, with my own individual sales target, and once as a sales manager leading a team, I got really close to it. And that is a very, very different world compared to, one where you're well away from that. And quite frankly, any customer that sort of strays anywhere near the top of your sales funnel is kind of sucked into that funnel and played.
Right.
And I've seen it happen. I know you guys have both seen it. You've seen it happen, and many of the companies we work with have seen it happen.
Right.
Never achieved it actually, and I keep striving for it. Maybe one day, I'll do it. But I've not many years left before I probably have to step back and go do something else, and as part of my retirement.
I'm sure that's not quite the case yet. What do you think, Prue?
But isn't everything in sales about a stretch?
Yeah,
Sure. So I think everything in sales is about a stretch. So the luxury of choice is something I think you should continually strive for. And why? I worked with a great sales lady, and she was always great with her forecasting. She always looked like she was really enjoying her job. And she always said to me, Prue, you just have to have enough to wait for them to hatch on their own. You can't crack the shell and make them hatch.
Fantastic.
If you've got enough, we can just be patient and everybody will be happy. And it's great, and because it's tough doesn't mean to say that you shouldn't try.
No. What was that expression we were talking about earlier in the meeting, Jonathan? You said one of your an Italian customers said to you once?
Oh, yes. So, I hate to admit it on a podcast, but it happens, doesn't it? I completely missed my forecast.
Oh,
and
right.
An Italian who was looking at it, and I apologise because the pronunciation is going to be absolutely terrible.
Go with
Carne sulla griglia, okay, which apparently translates to putting meat on the grill.
Right.
And he used this great. He asked me to go away and figure out what he really meant by that. And of course, what he meant was, there's a nice analogy with inviting people around for a barbecue, or if you're listening in the US, a cookout. It's a great analogy. You roughly know how many people are going to be coming around for the barbecue.
Right.
Have you prepared enough food? Bearing in mind that, some people may arrive far more hungry than others and eat a lot more than you expected. The dog, I've got dogs, and if anyone's trained with me, they've probably seen pictures of them. They're really good at eating the food and stealing it.
Yeah,
some could fall off the barbecue completely. You could burn it. I'm great at burning food on a barbecue. It's making sure you have enough, bearing in mind those other events, which are unforeseen, uncontrollable sometimes, to ensure that, you've got enough to ultimately deliver, exceed your sales target, but along the way, as Prue's rightly said, forecast accurately as well.
I would just like to add that my dogs obey the rules and don't steal things off the barbecue, Jonathan.
Ours would like to, but they might find it a bit hot, but that's another story.
Yeah,
We're not going to. This isn't a cooking show.
Yeah, and yours are too short as well.
That's very true as well. So, Prue, so what's the biggest impediment for a salesperson getting a luxury choice in that case? Okay, it might not be realistic, but from an aspirational point of view, what stops salespeople getting there, do you think?
I think one of the things that I see salespeople do, and I hold a mirror up and admit that I do it too, is we get too focused of what's inside the sales funnel, those active opportunities.
Right.
And we have to meet our numbers. And instead of spending the time on prospecting and being really honest about what's in our sales funnel, we desperately try to push, drag and kick things out of our sales funnel to meet our commitments.
Right.
Whereas if we recognise that a luxury of choice is a really good thing to have, then we would only take those things into our sales funnel or work on them that are likely to come out the end. So we don't do enough prospecting, Steve.
Okay, and I think we can all hold our hand up from time to time that we've all probably been guilty of that in our sales career. I know I have.
Yeah, I have too.
But
As charged.
What stops salespeople though? I mean, if we were to get a cross section of salespeople in the room now, they'd probably say too many emails, too much admin, CRM, HR, dare I say, company processes. All those things might be a reason. But what do you think really stops salespeople prospecting, Jonathan?
I think it's almost embarrassing to say it. And I think it takes some years of experience possibly to get over it. I think some people just come into sales and are very comfortable with it, but it's a no. And, getting a no is, you have to be able to bounce back from that. I think that fear of failure, that fear of no is one of the things. I think a failure to understand the connection between prospecting, developing ultimately a clean and healthy sales funnel and accurate forecasting. I'm not sure that the connection is truly understood. I think sometimes that, people look at it and think it's marketing's responsibility.
Right.
It may be in part, but actually it's not. And I think as well from time to time, I think there's a failure to appreciate the vast range of prospecting mechanisms you have and the many ways in which you can prospect. Some of the best prospectors I've ever come across in my life have also been accused of being the luckiest. And, what does that normally equate to? It's normally mean, they're active, right? They have lots of meaningful conversations with lots of customers on an ongoing basis.
Right.
And, and for that reason, they are often more successful. They just get lucky. They find more. Yeah. They open that extra door. They ask for a referral from somebody who may have just rejected them, okay? I have a little, very simple way of remembering to go prospecting. Every single time you take something out of the bottom of your funnel, what do we do first? Well, we should celebrate, okay? We're in sales, and that's great, isn't it? Great achievement.
Sure.
What do we do next? Well, we should absolutely thank the customer, and what a great time to seek a referral as well for more business.
Of course.
But after that, I always say you should panic.
Panic?
Panic. Absolutely, because it absolutely will drive the right behavior, which is to now recognize I've taken one in. I've got to put some more qualified opportunities into the top of my sales funnel in order to be successful. So Yeah, I say panic with a smile. Of course I do. But that's the behaviour, to think I've taken one out. I need to get some more in at the top. And, and it's really interesting when you look at the calendars of many salespeople, and I'm sure, I've had this too, and I've been guilty of this too. You see time allocated for, all sorts of things in selling, but where is the time allocated to prospecting? You rarely see it.
Right.
It's actually very, very unusual.
So is it a time management thing then, Prue, or is it something a bit more subtle than that?
I think it's a bit more subtle, actually.
Okay.
I think lots of people have sales plans, which are plans around the sales that I get and how many of this product or that service. But I often ask people, what about your prospecting plan? And I get a lot of odd looks. What do you mean a prospecting plan? Do you really know? If I say to people, how many prospects do you want? They say, as many as I can get. And that's actually not the right answer. It's the right number of prospects
We're
that
back
you
to
need.
luxury of choice again, aren't we? Yeah.
Yep.
So what does good look like in terms of prospecting, as well as what does good look like in terms of winning business? And I think if we could really understand and investigate and understand for us personally, what does my prospecting plan look like? How many? How frequently? What sort? I think it would really help us focus our activity at the top of the funnel. I think the other thing is when you engage with customers all through the process, it's the highest rate of rejection at the top of the funnel. So as human beings, we naturally pull back from getting more rejection when we're prospecting, whereas when we're working with active opportunities, the rejection rate decreases.
Right. Because we don't like the word no.
We don't like being told no or not interested, or we love somebody else, I think. And
Interesting.
yeah.
I think I've told you both this story, but when my wife and I lived in North America 20 odd years ago now, I went to like a one-day sales conference, one of these very American sort of big hotel things somewhere near New York. And the guy giving the presentation told his sales career, and his first sales job was selling life insurance door to door in the Bronx in 1982. Which was quite a violent place. Apologies if you're from New York, but it was at the time, I think. And, he would get people slam the door in his face, pull a gun on him. And his boss at the start of the week used to give him a card. And on that card was the word no written 50 times. And every time he was told to go away, politely or not politely, or a door shut in his face, or a gun pulled on him, he was told by his boss to cross out the word no. And if he came back at the end of the week with 50 no's, he got $1,000. Which in 1982 was a lot of money. It's a lot of money now. And I guess his boss knew that out of those 50 no's, he'd get at least one yes. So I guess it's a numbers game, guys, really. Is that?
Yeah, I think to a large extent that's true. But I think if you do it with intelligence,
right.
you have some control over that number.
Sure.
So and whatever your rate is today, it may be 2 yeses in those 50. I think if you do it with intelligence, against a plan, with a, Prue raises a great point, with a prospect, with some sort of simple prospecting plan as well. But if you do that with a sales plan, and a plan to go prospecting, you might be able to move that to 3 or 4. Doesn't sound like a lot, does it? But actually, it makes a huge difference to the end result.
Absolutely.
And also, it's just more motivational, right? You're just getting more yeses, or people that are showing a significant interest very early in the sales process in what you're selling, which
Absolutely.
is just great for all of us, isn't it?
So we talked a bit about the what then. So let's talk a bit about the how, Prue. So you said there's lots and lots of different ways. I think Jonathan said there's lots and lots of ways of prospecting. So what are they? How can we find customers? What kind of things can we do?
We can do lots of things, but honestly, what's the easiest thing? I know we all agree around this table.
Go on.
The easiest thing are those things that are under your control, and you've mentioned it already, Jonathan. Ask for referrals.
Okay.
Every time you engage with a customer, just ask for a referral. Who else is doing this kind of stuff? If you were me, who would you speak to?
I love that. If you were me, yeah.
I'd love some help.
Yeah. Because I think most people are generally, with a few exceptions, perhaps, most people like to help people, don't they? Yeah. So if you were to say, could you help me? Who else would you speak to? Would you do that before you get the order or during the sales process? When would you do that?
All the time.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, when I think about, where have the best sales leads come from in my life, very selfishly, they have come from referrals. There's no question. And I think one word we've missed there, which I would always add, is actively seek referrals, which Prue, I think, by asking those questions implied. But let's be explicit, right? You should actively seek referrals. Don't just wait for the customer to give you a referral. Actively seek them, and
Right.
and I've seen salespeople really good at that. So I think that's that's a great mechanism. Others that for me really stand out in my life. Some of the best sales leads I've ever had have come from my colleagues in the service team, and in an application support role or a product specialist role. I know those terms are used differently in different companies.
Sure.
Quite often, their customer-facing time is significantly greater than actually for me as a salesperson. Now, some of the listeners might criticize my my sales approach.
No, sure not.
Fair point. Okay, but they do. They have a lot of customer-facing time. They also, in many cases, have a very special relationship. And as a customer once at Imperial College told me, when I asked him, the difference between a salesperson and somebody in a support role is, hey, Jonathan, as a salesperson, you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent. In a support role, it's completely the reverse. You're innocent until you prove yourself guilty.
I love that.
And and the customers will tell those people things they may never tell me. Okay, I'm okay with that, but that means you need great internal relationships. That means you need to talk on a regular basis. To your local service guys, your application scientists, your other support specialists, etc.
Right.
The customers will tell them things. I think it's important as well, just to help your colleagues in those support roles really understand that you don't have all the information as a salesperson. I think sometimes they think, well, hey, Jonathan must know that, mustn't he? No, I may not know that actually. And you may have been given that piece of information. It's almost the piece that completes the picture in a puzzle, or a jigsaw, as we say, but in a puzzle. And we don't sometimes need all the pieces, but that final piece could give us the picture and give us everything we need. So that's another really, really good mechanism that over the years has helped me tremendously.
Sure. But
and I could go on and on and on.
I'm sure you could. So surely, Prue, we're not saying let's make our service engineers and our applications people salespeople. Surely that's not what we're saying here, is it?
No, not at all.
Right.
I think that what we're saying is let's ask them, did you hear that? What's going on? What do you know about that? We're only asking them to just keep their ears open and recognise what could be interesting or useful for you to follow up. That's what I think. But I just want to add one thing.
Please.
If as a result of listening to this, you go ahead and do that, please keep those people informed about how it
Correct.
went. Sometimes
Feedback.
we can be accused of taking a really hot lead, doing really well, winning the sale, getting all the recognition, but not going back and saying to that support person, thank you so much.
That's
this
a
is what
fantastic
happened.
point. Yeah, and I know I'm probably the same for you. In my sales management career, at some stage we've had like lead incentive programs for these people, but in my experience, the biggest incentive is somebody just saying thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point, Prue. Definitely.
Keep them informed
Keep them
because they'll do it again.
So in summary, guys, what we're saying really, to get a luxury of choice, which may or may not be achievable, it's prospecting, and more prospecting.
Yep. I mean, I think it was always be closing, wasn't it? Okay. I think there's probably, we can probably reference some films where that's appeared.
Absolutely.
Always be closing, but actually, is there a strong argument for always be prospecting? I absolutely think there is. And striving for that luxury choice of choice is just a great place to get as a salesperson. And even when there's more challenging economic times and we see less buying customers, or the customers that there are more intensely sought after by by all of the suppliers, then it just becomes critical.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Prue, Jonathan, thanks ever so much for your time today. So just for the listeners' benefit, as I say, this is going to be the first of what we see as being a monthly podcast. It may become more frequent if the opportunity arises. And we would love to hear your thoughts. So if you're in technical sales management, even applications, I guess, from what we've just said, really, we would love to hear what you'd like us to talk about. If you'd like any particular guest to come on the show. We've talked about possibly having a purchaser on the show in a future episode.
Absolutely.
Which I think would be great, really.
Yep.
So how's the best way for anybody listening to us to sort of get in contact and just suggest things they'd like us to talk about?
Yeah, well, you'll find us on LinkedIn, obviously, and Steve, who's facilitated this podcast. He does a lot on social media. He's just dragging Prue and I into the modern world. So apart from that, you can find us obviously online. www.georgejames-training.com. Okay,
Thanks.
is the website.
And we have a link. We have a LinkedIn training page now as well, Prue, don't we? Yeah.
We do, yes.
Yeah, and of course our own individual LinkedIn pages as well. So Jonathan and Prue, thanks again for your thoughts and insights today. If you've enjoyed today's episode of the Luxury of Choice podcast, please let us know and don't forget to leave us a review. We'll be back again next month with another show looking at why selling is a process. In the meantime, happy selling and always keep prospecting.